All right. Well, it's a Tuesday. We're Tuesday, the first episode for Woodall's Outdoor Hospitality Update in 2022. I almost forgot what year it was. I'm still in 2021, I guess. I'm Ben Quiggle, host of the show, editor of Woodall's Campground Magazine, and of course, along with me is Mike Gast,
Hi,
uh,
everybody.
writer for RV Travel, former vice president of Campgrounds of America, communications, vice president of communications. And then, Mike, you're working on their guide, right? Their
Yeah, we still work
KOA
with
guide.
KOA. My wife and I still help KOA put together their annual directory, which is just getting ready to go to print this year. And there's a lot of campgrounds in there. We've got about 525 in there this year.
Yeah, that's a big effort. I can't imagine
Mm.
putting together that money. And the great thing about that guide is there's always a ton of great photos. A lot of the guides have great photos. I always appreciate looking at the campground photos and all the different guides. So it's really nice. But and then of course with us is Paul Bosley. And Paul, I guess I'll just let you introduce yourself, and hopefully I said your last name correctly.
That's Bosley, but that's fine.
Bosley. Okay.
He
Bosley
gets
and
it wrong
Bosley.
every week. It doesn't matter who it
Yeah.
is, Paul. So don't feel bad.
And Mike, I'm looking forward to getting the campground guide. I signed up for it. I'm one of the KOA rewards members that looks forward
Oh,
to
good.
the guide. Yes. As a matter of fact, when we won at the USA show last year, we stayed at a KOA every stop of the way from Florida out into Yellowstone. So I was like KOA to KOA to KOA to KOA, and I use that guide religiously. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting that guide when you're done with it.
Well, if you find a mistake in it, now you know who to call.
There you go. Well,
Not that you
I
not
guess
that you
Ben.
can. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Ben. I interrupt you.
Not that you can fix it in a print product, but
Oh
maybe on
no,
the
but
online.
yeah, we do it all online too. So either way.
There you
Go
go.
ahead, Paul. Sorry, just kind of introduce yourself, I guess, Paul.
Well, I'll give you the Reader's Digest version. About I guess 6 or 7 years ago, I was introduced at a franchise show that I was speaking at to the gentleman at the time that ran the franchise sales for Yogi Bear Jellystone Parks, and they asked me to take on their financing because the company they were using had basically shut them off. A bank that they were using it said we had enough Jellystone in our portfolio, so they're all jellied out, and they decided to look for another lender, and that really led me to meeting a couple of the people that were involved with the ARVC National School, and I had spoke at a couple of the Jellystone conventions, and they asked me if I would be the instructor for the National School, which they have three classes: campground, the budgeting, financing, and cash flow management. When I started doing that about 3 years ago, and then when the pandemic hit, what happened is they asked me because I'm a counselor for SCORE, for the Service Corps Retired Executives. It's part of the SBA. I've been a volunteer counselor for SCORE for about a decade. And I did about 10 weeks of volunteer work with ARVC to teach people that owned a campground how to get an EIDL loan or a PPP loan. And, one thing led to the next, and I speak at the conventions. And, so I've been very involved with financing in the campground industry for about 6 years now. And like I said, when I was just introducing myself, I bought a travel trailer. We have an Airstream, and we don't fly anymore. We go from campground to campground when we're traveling wherever we go. And so I am not only a financier, but I'm a customer.
So, Paul, my experience with KOA over the years is uh, campground financing has always been a bugaboo for campground owners. It's very difficult to explain to a large bank what a campground needs in the way of financing because of the seasonality of the business. I know that in the case of KOA, they really had a breakthrough probably 25 years ago when uh, one of our franchisees started making the little cabins out in Montana. He actually was owning the Great Falls KOA, and he started a company called Prairie Craft. But the obstacle was the campground owners couldn't get financing to add the cabins. And so he went to a small bank called Independence Bank up in Havre, Montana, and they did the research and realized it was a really good business to be in, and they've kind of made that their major part of their portfolio over the years. And it's always interesting to note that these campgrounds, which are doing very very well right now, still struggle sometimes just to get a regular bank loan because banks just don't understand uh, this type of seasonality business. Has that been your experience too?
No, we've had a lot of luck with it. I guess to dig a little deeper into our background, we're an agent for about 30 different SBA and USDA lenders. So whenever anybody, it doesn't matter what kind of company it is, or franchise, non-franchise, contacts us, we have a large portfolio of lenders that we work with. When I became involved with initially with Yogi Bear Jellystone Park, uh, we sent out the FDD, and we had a handful of lenders that say they'd wanted to finance them if they came along. Um, One of the benefits of campgrounds is it's collateralized by real estate. So, where a lot of franchises, they're leasing space in a shopping center, and there's construction, but the construction's really owned by the landlord when it's done, and the franchise fee is not something that can be transferred. So when you're doing an SBA loan or a USDA loan with a company like that, there's really no collateral other than maybe the person's home. Where with a campground, you've got the collateral involved. So we didn't have really any trouble at all. Yeah, and we have about four or five. The way I describe our company is, when I'm talking, if you were a client and you were talking to me for the first time, I use a football analogy. I say you're the center, and you're hiking me the ball. And my job is to get you a loan. And I've got about five different lenders out there that are all wide receivers jumping up and down, saying, "Throw me the ball, throw me the ball," and everybody gets it. And it's just my job is to figure out which one to throw the ball to, and that's really what we do.
Has it gotten maybe easier over time? Like, is it just the market that we're in right now that maybe makes the banks a little bit more willing, or, um, as you mentioned, I guess the collateral and stuff?
I think it's probably the industry's caught people's attention. If you look at what happened at ARVC in Raleigh, there was about two or three different banks that were there that's never been there before.
Yeah.
Uh, and so I think the industry's caught some attention, but we've been able to do it really consistently for at least 5 or 6 years. A couple, 3 or 4 before the pandemic even came around.
Yeah.
So I know on the RV owners side, there's it's been a rough couple of years because they just can't seem to easily get around anymore. They can't get there just isn't enough places for everybody with this huge influx of RVers we've seen, and so there's a lot of frustration out there amongst RV owners as to where they're going to camp, which has put a lot of pressure on the campground business to expand
Hmm.
existing parks, to build new parks.
Yeah.
Are you seeing a huge influx in business that way and on expansions and new constructions?
Yeah. We've just from Raleigh alone, we have about 30 different people that have contacted us to either
Wow.
launch a new campground or expand an existing one. And that's just from that one show. When
Wow.
anybody contacts Arvik, they usually send them to me, to try to help them out. So yeah, we've been pretty busy with people coming to us that are trying to do it, and it just depends on whether they're trying to buy one, do a bank acquisition, a business acquisition, or whether they want to find some dirt, or they own the land already and they want to do a development.
What when they're coming to you, I guess, are a lot of them like prepared, or do you run into people that are maybe just at the very beginning and they kind of had, no idea of what they wanted to do, or, what what are they like when they come to you, I guess?
I'd say the majority of them are trying to figure it out. a lot of the people, when you're trying to build a campground, you're dealing with millions of dollars. So the people that are coming are relatively well off. I mean, I think I've only had two people that were coming to me that didn't have a significant amount of capital, and they were trying to figure out how to leverage the entire thing, which is not possible. But the majority of them are pretty well off, and they're developers or they're people that have been attracted to it. So they're relatively savvy, but they don't know how to finance a campground. A lot of them went to a local bank, which is something, Mike, you just said. They go to a local bank, and the local bank really isn't an interest in that, because they even with SBA loans, the banks are liable for roughly 30% of the loan. So if you're looking at a couple $1 million loan, they got to keep $600,000 of liability on their books, and if they're not comfortable with the deal or the person, they're just not going to do it. So we have to help them with the financial projections, and we don't help with laying out or anything like that. We don't do that, but we can help with the financial projections.
Okay. Yeah. What what state, I imagine for these loans, you have to have a pretty good idea of how many sites you want at your park, the infrastructure, different things like that, correct?
Yep. Yeah, you have to have that all laid out. Because when you're applying for the loan, your loan request is based upon, in part, your development costs. So you have to know all that.
Okay. Yeah. So typically, do a lot of these people work with consultants and different things too that are involved in that process?
Yeah, some have. Some are going to buy it. Like, for instance, with KOA, as much, they lay out the park for them, and they provide all that. Stone, gives them off to a consultant. And then there's a couple of consultants out there that just do this kind of work. They just do that kind of development work. So it just depends on how they want to proceed.
Yeah, definitely.
So a lot of what you're financing is also campground improvements, not just reconstruction. I'm assuming that they might be adding amenities, swimming pools, other recreational amenities. So you're involved in that too.
Yeah, there's a challenge with that. What I've seen with the people that have an existing park, they normally have a bank loan with a local bank, and it's normally a good loan. I mean, a real low interest rate, fully amortized loan. Every once in a while, you run into a person that has a fully amortized. They have a 20 or 25-year loan term, but they have a balloon payment, due that's at the end of 5 or 6 years, and they're easy to refinance. And in fact, the people have to refinance them at some point. But when you see somebody that has a fully amortized loan at something like 4 or 5% interest, and it's fixed, they're not going to want to refinance that. And that means that the lender that has that loan is in first position, which in turn means another bank's not going to do any financing for them and be in second position behind that initial mortgage. So one of the articles that I wrote for Ben, which I sent to him earlier this week, is an article that I wrote about equipment financing, because anything that's tangible can be financed through an equipment financing agreement or for an equipment lease, which would include, park model cabins, glamping structures, IT infrastructure, water features, different golf carts, all that stuff can be financed through an equipment finance agreement. In that situation, the collateral that the lender has, the first mortgager has, is no effect on it, because the collateral for these agreements are just the collateral of the equipment. So we do a lot of that type of work.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned in the article about how it kind of helps, those kind of loans too can help park owners kind of stay up to date on different things, I guess, on equipment. And like you mentioned, the IT, obviously that's changing all the time. So
yeah, like at that glamping show, there was I think there was 10 or 15 glamping manufacturers that were there. They had everything from a fancy tent to like a structure that's, it was really nice. It had a hard wall with a tent top, and they had little fireplaces in them. I mean, there were some real nice glamping structures there. So, and that's new, I think. I haven't seen it before.
I mean, yeah, I mean that's just exploded. And some of those structures, you're like, boy, I could live in one of these things.
Yeah,
This wouldn't be too
yeah.
bad. Except
Well,
where I'm at, I'm in northern Michigan, so it's like 10 degrees outside. I don't know.
you keep
I,
stacking up the kids, Ben, you're going to have an annex anyway.
yeah, I'm just gonna put a bell tent out back, and that's where some of them are gonna sleep.
So,
So
Paul, what's your guess on where we're headed this year? I know the interest rates are a question. Obviously, the economy is a question, unemployment, everything else. Does it all impact what's happening as far as your business?
Well, yeah, the majority of people that are financing serious money are doing an SBA or a USDA loan, and they're all variable rate loans, and they're based on prime. Prime rate's the floor, and then there's a risk premium that gets added to that, which is capped by the SBA and the USDA at 2.75%. So right now, prime's at 3.25, and the cap is 2.75. So when you have a strong borrower, they can negotiate the risk premium because it's not as risky. So maybe they can beat up the bank a little bit and lower that down if they're experienced or if they're very strong borrowers. Now the prime rate has been published, by the Wall Street Journal. That the Fed Board of Governors has indicated that they're going to raise prime 3 times this year, and they're going to start in March. So that means that if premium was right now is 6.25, so it's going to go in March to 6.5, and then eventually to 6.75, and then eventually to 7. So, and it doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're talking about $1 million loan, that brings that payment way up. I got my UPS guys just delivering something.
We're working from home. Yeah, that's so you anticipate that loan demand is going to go down throughout the year. Is this going to slow down this influx of activity
I
we've
don't,
seen?
I don't think so. I think the demand is there. I mean, I don't know, but my instincts telling me that it's the park industry is just going to keep growing. I mean, think about it. It's a great investment for a person that wants to put that kind of money into the property, and from my perspective, I think it's going to grow.
so like looking towards the future, I guess what does slow down maybe developments and things, I guess in your mind, what obviously at some point it's probably going to even out a little bit, right?
I guess the lenders, I think, make a big difference, because if the
Yeah.
lenders back away, if something serious happens, and lenders back away because it gets real uncertain, like it's been uncertain for a couple of years, but it's been to the benefit of the campground industry. Because people are going to still vacation, and they're not going to get in airplanes anymore, maybe, and they're not going to get on cruise ships. I mean, I'm in Florida, and believe me, every time you turn on the news, it's just some kind of horror story about going on in the cruise industry. Because they're incurring all these costs for these huge ships that are as big as a city, and they can't even put people on them anymore. I mean, and that's a big employer in Florida. So people still want to travel, and that's why I think what you guys were saying, it's hard for people in the campground industry to have enough sites available, because you can't even get a trailer. I sold our Airstream and got a bigger one because we're going to travel more, and we wanted to have a living room. And I talked to the RV dealer, and he says if you ordered one now, you're waiting a year and a half before you can even get one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's I guess that leads into the next question. I know when I talk to park model in equipment, some equipment vendors, they talk about, especially on the park model side, when you're talking like Cavco, Skyline, some of the bigger manufacturers, they're already a year out on orders,
Right.
and the price kind of fluctuates. So like you may be looking at a unit now and before you get it, the price may have gone up. I guess, do you
Yep.
see a lot of that on your end?
Yeah.
How does that
Yeah.
how does that financing work when the prices constantly fluctuate?
Well, the clients that we're dealing with are frustrated because they the manufacturers will not commit to a price until they sign a contract. And they can't sign a contract until they get their financing in place. So it's kind of like the chicken or the egg, which one comes first? Because they can't sign the contract till they get their financing. You can't get the financing until you know what you're financing and how much it costs. So, it's a real problem for people. And I think that's why I think the glamping industry is probably going to even take off even more because they're not hamstringed by that type of situation. I mean, because there's very little wood involved. I mean, the flooring and the walls maybe, and not even all of them have wood on the walls that I saw. So if you're not in Michigan, if you got a campground a little bit south, I think you're going to see a lot of people putting in glamping structures. That's what I think.
What's crazy is the amount of winter campers. I know we just posted a story a few weeks ago about winter camping, and that's just crazy. So these people that'll go out and camp in the snow and tent. I mean, it's not just RVs either. They're tents, glamping tents. So it's going to be interesting to see how that impacts things too. But I did notice at the Glamping Show USA that there were smaller, like wood style glamping structures that were coming out.
Right.
They kind of look like a park model, but obviously aren't a park model. They're smaller
Right.
and they're more tiny houses. But
Yeah.
maybe parks get more into those if they're easier and quicker to make. So
That's my guess. I think you're going to see that, because realistically, I talked to all the manufacturers because we were trying to see if they had financing, and the range was anywhere from 10,000 up to maybe 25,000 per structure. And a park model cabin, you're looking at 2-3 times that.
oh yeah, especially with how high in demand they are right now. So did you get your Airstream, or are you still waiting on it?
I sold the one I have a couple weeks ago. We get the new one in May.
That's what you think. We'll see.
Well, no, it was supposed to be February. Now it's May.
Oh, okay.
Oh, so this is the adjustment. Okay.
So, Paul, we got a lot of new players in campground ownership. It's become so attractive that we've seen a lot of folks that have never thought of camping before jumping into this. And sometimes it's folks that just have money to invest and they see this as a great investment, but they really don't know much
Right.
about the business. We're seeing.
Right.
I know even on the KOA side, toward the end of my tenure there, we were seeing folks, for instance, that were in the storage unit business that thought
Right.
it was an easy thing to transfer over. They
Right.
knew how to
Right.
rent space, darn it, and they thought a
Right.
campground would be easy to run. And so you're seeing that happen. You're seeing some outside industries get into this. Is the knowledge base, are they up on camping enough to approach a bank and get a loan like that?
No, no. I tell anytime I see anyone that has no experience in the industry, I tell them you have to or you should take the ARVC National School. You get certified. Learn it, or buy a KOA or buy a Jellystone Park. That you got door number 1, door number 2, or door number 3. Banks aren't going to give money to a couple $1,000,000 to somebody that has no background in this industry or is not buying a franchise.
So you're saying franchises still have a lot of value then when you go into a bank.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, that's the way lenders work, actually. The majority of lenders that we work with much prefer a franchise. And they tend to look at the FDD, the Federal Disclosure Document, and they're looking for a franchise that has more than 50 open and they have some kind of track record, which of course both KOA and Jellystone have. But if you're a new friend, like for instance, if we decided to launch a franchise tomorrow, we're going to do the Ben Quiggle franchise or something like that, then we sent out the FDD and we had 2 of them. Banks are going to look at that almost like if it was just somebody that was starting out as an independent. The banks prefer franchises for anything. It It doesn't matter whether it's a campground, a restaurant.
Yeah. So do you have a lot of people without experience coming up to you and so you tell them to go to Arvik, to the schools, is that what they do and then you loan them the money, I guess? Or you find the
Well,
loans for them?
yeah, that's part of the answer. But if they don't if they don't want to go to, I've had sent a couple of them to KOA. I've sent a couple of them to the Yogi Bear. Um, if they don't want to do that, then I tell them get involved with the local regional association, see what they offer. Um, because some of them might have something that a regional organization might offer. But basically, you have to do something to understand the industry. The way I explain it to people is just because I like to eat doesn't mean I should own a restaurant. Just I like to work out, but that doesn't mean I should own a gym. I mean, just because you like to camp or you think it's a good business doesn't mean you're going to get financing for. You're looking for people that are over $1 million. The bank's going to take a $300,000 exposure for every million that campground costs, and they want to know that you are committed to learning the industry.
Yeah.
So what
Yeah.
what is the current state of affairs done to the timeline to get a loan? Is it longer? Is it quicker now? Is it
Longer. Well, it depends on whether it's a business acquisition or ground up construction. Business acquisition is the same. It's just based on, the financials of the seller, whether the intent, that they've agreed on the price is supported by the financials of the seller, and whether the borrower has a good background and, they have the money to put into it. So that's the same, 90 days to maybe 120 days, depending on how long it takes to get an appraisal done. When it comes from ground up construction, it takes a lot longer because, getting a contractor right now is tough.
It seems like a lot of these plans for new construction are getting some local opposition too. There's a lot of permitting issues that go on out there that seem to go on forever, and some of these communities where these new campgrounds are going into have had a lot of hearings that where the locals may not understand what a campground is or just flat out don't want it. Is that a real challenge? Where's the loan in that process? Do you have to have your financing in place before you start something like that, or is all that permitting have to be done before the bank gets involved?
Generally, the way it works is a person gets pre-qualified. So it's like when you're looking for a house, you get pre-qualified before you find the house. And it could be a pre-qualification for a business purchase, or it can be a pre-qualification for ground up, whether they own the land or whether they're going to go find the land. So once they get pre-qualified, then what you're talking about, that comes in at that point. So the permitting process and the approval processes take place before the loan is actually closed and approved in underwriting. So the step would be pre-qualification, get all your ducks in a row for your construction costs, and then get approved, which the closing will be predicated on the permitting.
Yeah.
So here's another one for you, Paul. Are you expecting to see, or have you already seen, some requests for financing for the transition into electric vehicles?
No.
Are you anticipating?
I haven't seen any yet, but my instincts tell me that that's good. I think huge companies are going to be dealing with that don't even qualify for SBA. If you have too much money, you're not qualified for SBA.
Mm.
USDA, yes, but SBA, no.
It has pretty much all like the SBA stuff from the COVID thing. Has that pretty much all expired now? And
Yeah,
we're beyond that now.
Ended December 31st.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I was just wondering. I know they had a bunch of different loan options, and I know I saw you on the Arvik webinars talking about a lot of them. So it was all very confusing to me. But you seem to know what you were doing. So
I that's one thing. I know a lot about financing, but that's I couldn't build a birdhouse. So I mean,
Well, and that brings up another good question. Do you see other folks getting into your business? Have you been kind of a lone wolf out there up until now? Is there other people doing this, or are there going to be a lot more brokers out there?
that's a good question. The only ones I saw in there are banks. We've seen some banks all of a sudden get real interested in it, and they don't necessarily work with us. We're a lot of times viewed as brokers, but we're actually an agent. There's a
Mhm.
difference. An agent is more involved with the packaging process. We get involved with the financial projections and with laying out the loan request, and we're in the process right till the end. A
Yeah.
broker is more, hey, Ben, I got this buddy Mike here that wants to finance a campground, so let me get you his contact information and pay me a broker fee. See you later. Bye. Um, so we're a little bit more engaged. So our responsibility to the lender is more encompassing. We can't send anybody into a lender that we don't believe is going to be qualified to be approved, and it can't be an incomplete package. It's got to be a complete package. So it's almost like we work for the bank or the lender, but we don't get paid a salary. We get paid a 1099, and it's as they say, we eat what we kill. It's just whenever a loan closes, that's how we get paid.
So you know a lot of the ins and outs of what it takes to have a successful campground. Have you ever been tempted to buy one yourself?
No, no.
Mike's Mike's looking Mike's looking for a business partner.
No,
Yeah,
no. It's funny. I have all sorts of respect for campground owners, but I think I'm in that chair where I know too much. I know how hard it is. I know what a dedicated person it takes to operate something that's really even a seasonal campground where it's 7 days a week. And we always laugh that you didn't get up. You had to get up before the first camper got up, and you didn't get to go to bed until the last fire was out. So
yeah,
it's
yeah,
hard work running a campground. So
yeah. I'll
it's a
bet.
beautiful lifestyle, but it's not easy.
Yeah, no, I'm turning 70 this year. I'm gonna work as long as I can, but I'm trying. My goal is really to see all the parks. I may be one of the only guys you ever talked to with a degree, a 4-year degree in recreation and parks. Um, I wanted to work in the park business. I mean, that's what I wanted to do, and I was thinking more state or national parks at the time, and there wasn't as many, hardly any campgrounds. But no, I want to see them. I want to go to them and see them. I've seen a lot of them already, but I'd like to check all of them if I could.
Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great goal. So there's a lot of really neat parks, and if anything, throughout this whole pandemic and the RVers looking for new places to camp, it's just that I think some of the less exposed national parks are getting more attention. So that's kind of
Yeah,
neat. So,
yeah.
um, but uh, but it's a great big, beautiful country out there. So
It's gorgeous. It's a
yeah,
gorgeous country.
yeah. Yep. So, well, was there any other questions you had, Mike, or any topic
No,
you
I
wanted
think
to
this
discuss?
has been great. I
Yeah.
mean, there's so much to learn out there, and so many people now that are starting probably less than ground zero, and they've got a lot to learn before they can get up to that point of actually turning dirt and getting into the business, or even buying an existing park. So I think this is very valuable information, Paul.
Yeah,
Um,
I think Paul and I saw some of those people at the glamping show because there were, some really great people at the glamping show, but they came in with some really great ideas, and I think some of the, sessions and stuff, they realized how much work they still had to do, and hopefully they get the work done, but it does take a lot of work. So,
yeah,
Mm.
absolutely.
Yeah, they could build RVs a lot faster than they build campsites.
No kidding. If you guys want to have more sessions like this and we dig in a little bit more, maybe underwriting and how it's looked at, or USDA loans, or anything you guys want to talk about. I like doing stuff like this. I enjoy it. Like I said, I'm a volunteer for SCORE. Have been for 10 years. And, we don't sell ourselves. We just share information, and whoever uses us, uses us. That's up to them.
It's great.
yeah, yeah. Well, we put your link to your page on the Facebook pages that we go live on, and then the YouTube channel too. So hopefully people will click on the link and go check out your business website and what you guys do. And obviously, you guys work with the National Association of RV Parks and Campgrounds. I believe you're a member benefit provider, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have some benefits there if you're an RVIC member. And Paul's just really knowledgeable. So it was great to have you on, Paul.
Thank you. It's nice meeting you both face to face. So
Yeah, thanks, Paul.
Well,
if I
we
can
didn't.
ever be part of it, let me know. I'm happy to do it. Like I said, you guys have been great. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks, everyone. Have a great day, and thank you for watching.
Travel safe out there in the new Airstream.
Thank you.